Hi, and welcome to the Rise Through the Ranks Summit, brought to you by Influence Solutions. We all have the ability to make a positive impact on the world. In fact, it is worth noting that people who have made a real difference aren't all privileged, advantaged, or special by any stretch. Here to share with us how anyone can achieve what they want and create a positive social impact is Vineet Rai. Vineet Rai is the founder of Aavishkaar Group, managing assets worth $650 million and growing. The group provides funding to social entrepreneurs while playing a pivotal role in building the impact investing ecosystems in India, Southeast Asia, and Africa. Recently on the cover of Forbes India, Vineet has received numerous awards for his work, and he also serves on several boards and councils, including as Commissioner at the Business Commission for Sustainable Development and as Senior Advisor to Blended Finance Working Group at the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. And here to interview him is Karen Leong. She's the co-founder of Influence Solutions, an influence thought leader, international keynote speaker, author, and executive coach.
Hi, welcome to the Rise to Your Rank Summit. And today I'm with a fascinating individual, and that's Vineet Rai, who is the founder of the Aavishkaar Group. Vineet, welcome. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks for having me.
You know, you have gone through an incredible journey. I mean, right now, your group manages over $650 million in terms of funds. But your journey has not always been so smooth. So you have your own rise through the ranks journey with highlights and with lowlights. So can you share with us what inspired you to be doing what you're doing today?
Karen, I come from a classical Indian middle-class family. I started, I was an average student, so nothing exceptional in my early life. Average student, did okay, wanted to join Indian Army. For some strange reason, the Army did not like me as much, so got rejected. And then I went to an institute called Indian Institute of Forest Management, where I learned a little bit about management, a little bit about forestry. And then my first job was in forest, as it should be. I was in a remote place, living a pretty Tarzan kind of life, chasing elephants and bear and seeing snakes hanging around. But spending those 2-3 years, around that time, I also got married, and my wife found the forest not as enchanting as I thought I did. And so I was given a short timeline to find a job which was not really in the forest. I looked for every potential job. With great difficulty, I moved to a research association or research associate position at Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. It's a premier management institute in India. While doing research, I realized I was not cut out to actually sit and type papers in one place. So I was very clear I can't do research for the rest of my life. I stayed there for 7-8 months and then I quit. As I was quitting, and I had no clue of where I was going, I was told that government of Gujarat, which is the state in which I was there in India, was considering setting up an incubator, and they were looking for people who will join there. I was advised to apply there. I made an application, and through a lot of luck, some bit of pluck, the government decided to appoint me as the CEO of that institution. Now, it may sound, and I was 26 years old, so it was a fascinating position to get a designation of CEO, even though in reality, it didn't mean much. Effectively, I was given roughly around $100,000 at that exchange rate. And my job was to actually convert ideas of farmers into businesses. I worked on that for 4 years. I was working with a very strong board. I had a lot of access. What I learned is if you're trying to change rural Gujarat, which is part of rural India, people are looking for capital that can take risk. And there is a massive deficit of talent, because generally capital and talent moves from rural to urban. It doesn't, expecting capital and talent to move to a rural area is like expecting water to go up the hill.
Yes.
And so what we realized very quickly is that without capital and without talent, you can't really change rural India to the extent that needs to be changed. I went back to my board. I tried to convince my board that I have got this fascinating new insight. It seemed to them that my insight was fairly well known, because one of the board members said, well, whether you go to Silicon Valley or any part of the world, capital and talent is a global problem.
Yes.
So it's nothing so fascinating that you have found out. I felt that my board doesn't listen to what my point of view was, and in a bit of a huff, and it's not something that you would want to do, I quit my job. And then I realized I have $100, but I had made up my mind I will set up a venture fund that will offer capital, a high risk capital, to rural India. And I'll also inspire young people to join and play an entrepreneurial role with rural India. So with this great idea, with my $100, which was my personal life saving, I jumped out. I started a fund called Aavishkaar in 2001 October, and then I borrowed roughly $1,500 or $2,000 to set up a company called IntelliCap, or Intellectual Capital, which basically one was a venture capital fund, one was a intellectual capital, or a company that will attract talent from across the world. You can understand a forester, 29-year-old with very limited access, no capital, has never made any investments, trying to start something out. I was really struggling very badly. I struggled my way to $1 million in 2005. By that time, I had learned few things, and these are critical learning journeys for me. I was able to survive between 2001 and 2005 because I was able to bring my conviction in my own ideas to the fore. So I said, this is what the market needs, and I genuinely believed in it. So I put my best foot forward to make it happen. But my limitation started once I actually took that audacious or high risk decision. The second challenge that I faced was surviving my conviction with no money, no capital, and no backing. And that is when I actually surrounded myself with people who were much more capable, much more qualified, and much more knowledgeable about what I was doing. What I realized is reflected glory works in pushing you up, because I may have the conviction, I may have the desire to bring about a change, but without the experience and the skills of others, I won't go very far. The third thing which was my experience between 2001 and 2005 was that I was a nice guy, and I was trying to help other nice people, trying to create a business in the process that will make a difference to the lives of the poor. This is a very complicated way of doing anything. If you want to scale things up, you have to keep them simple. So the first thing I did was I took out the nice in me, and I started focusing on the business rather than the idea of helping poor people. Because if my business was has the habit ingrained that it will help the poor people, then my focus should be making the business work. And that was the third thing that we focused on. Find good businessmen, help them with the idea where they can integrate the low income or poor population in their business model, and then just focus on the business, because the business will help the poor. And that part, by the time 2005 happened, I have some idea on that. And that made my story much more simpler to tell. I started pitching much more accurately. And so I went from $1 million, which I had raised by 2005, to around $14 million by 2007. And then as my articulation became better and better, and some of our execution also followed, I have jumped up to 200, 300, 500. Now we are roughly around 750 million, 800 million, hoping to reach $1 billion by next year.
It's quite a trajectory, and you know, and you have shared three very powerful but yet very, very simple philosophies that helped you in the early days, you know, where you talked about like 2001 to 2005. And I'd like you to just expand on it a little bit, because I'm sure a lot of people will find it very relevant. Where you talked about the three things: having conviction, surrounding yourself with great people, and also focusing on the impact of business first. Now, let's talk about surrounding yourself with people who are more experienced and wiser than you. What is one thing you did to attract these people to you? Because, you know, they need to buy into you first.
I think, Karen, it's not that difficult. If you are actually aware of about your surroundings and aware about your limitations, you'll be surprised that if you're following an audacious goal, or if you are taking up a challenge that has not been taken by others, you would see good people rallying themselves around you and try to help you. The problem lies is if you do not acknowledge their presence or you do not co-opt them in your journey. One of the big challenges that I have learned over a period of time is that if you actually consider yourself to be the person who will deliver all results, chances are you will ignore others' ability and contribution to influence you. So as an entrepreneur, as a person who's actually leading the charge, of course you have to lead. But leadership does not necessarily mean that you are the best guy to do everything. And that acknowledgement is critical. And I realized very quickly, and one of the gentlemen, Arun Dias, who was in Singapore, I actually met him in Singapore. Anant Nageshwaran, who also lives in Singapore even now, Jayesh Parekh, Praveen Gandhi. These were the people who were much more experienced than I was. They were willing to be the cheerleaders. They were willing to be the supporters. They had more experience, more gray hair, more ability, more capital, but they allowed me to be the leader. They supported me in pushing me forward. And my belief was, and I actually even today believe that without these people, all my conviction would have come to naught.
You talked about the audacious idea. Many people who are more experienced, who have more capital, who have more expertise, they themselves benefit from having this ignited when they're working together with a cause. I mean, so yours is a great example of how you're rallying people. And I can see that you have also continued to live this value of acknowledgement. And it's very, very much in you. Now let's move on to the second point where you talked about the importance of business impact. I'm sure you're still a nice guy. But now you have focused on the importance of showing the ROI of your impact. Many people who are watching this are also very interested in how they can start making their impact more visible. So what is one tip that you can have such that people are able to show that impact more?
So, see, we all evolve as we learn. So I was coming from a place where I could see very large number of poor people, and I wanted to impact them, impact their lives. And one of the ways to impact their lives was the idea of actually creating a pool of capital that will identify entrepreneurs and give them that money so that they can build businesses that could create jobs, livelihoods, and reduce risk and vulnerability in the life of the people. I could have gone and done that myself. I could have gone and helped 5 poor people. I could have helped 10 poor people. But the critical difference in my perspective was I took a levered approach. Instead of actually going and becoming the entrepreneur or the helper of a poor person, I took an approach that the most difficult part is bringing capital. So let me actually focus on the idea of bringing capital and use that capital to help a much more effective guy to build a business that will finally impact the poor person. By being 3 steps away from the poor person, I might have lost my goodness. But in the process, what I did was able to create a lever. And as you know, a lever can help you lift much larger weights. And that's essentially what we have managed to do. Created a multiplier effect on impact. So today we claim that we have created 250,000 jobs and livelihoods. Now, had I tried to do things on my own, I might have reached 1,000 people, not 250,000 jobs and livelihoods. 59 million people have been serviced, touched, or reached by companies that we supported. That's a very large number. I could have never do it was because we were able to support others to do what they were better at. And I think ultimately, when you're trying to make an impact, you need to identify your capability and also the best leverage point where your skills will give you the maximum return. When you talk about impact ROI, in my view, in whatever business you are in, you have to ask yourself not that. So, for example, for me, making the difference to the life of the poor person was probably the highest impact that I could make. But then the quantum, the number of people that I would have done would have been very less. But from 3 stages away, I would have reached much more people, probably changed much more lives, even though the pleasure of those changes may not be as direct to me. However, that's where you need to identify, was it the ability and the quantum that you are looking at, or are you looking to get a very direct gratification of impact? To me, a return of impact takes place when you actually position yourself at the right lever and not necessarily very close to what you want to do. I have heard and been told by a lot of people in Singapore that they want to actually come down to India, go to the villages and help people do much better. And my belief is they have never lived in villages, probably have spent 20 years out of their 30, 35, 40 years of age outside India. They would be like fish out of water. So a better way to generate leverage and impact would be to use your current positions to influence your business, to support people like us who can then leverage that and support those who are on the ground, instead of you jumping in and becoming a foot soldier and trying to make a difference. To me, that's actually the real return of investment, return of impact, whichever one way you see it.
So it's about extending your viewpoint as well, and extending. I like your analogy of a lever, that it's not just immediately what you can do, but really seeing what the multiplier effect is. And for you, you've built an ecosystem. How do you then select what are the business that are worthy of investing?
It's simple and it's complex. The first thing you need to actually identify is why are we in this business? So we are in the business of actually looking at a business model that integrates low-income people in the business itself. When we are looking to do a first preliminary selection, our first question is, does this business somehow create jobs and livelihoods for low-income or poor people? Or does it reduce risk and vulnerabilities of low-income and poor people? If either of the two things are true, then the business is now to be considered on commercial merits. We are looking and focusing on the commercial aspect of a business. We focus because we do an early stage, and our thinking about business is actually, we do it 2-3 ways. One is we are a thesis-based investor. So we'll come up with a thesis. For example, in 2012, we came up with a thesis that India is producing a large amount of waste. Most of our waste management is actually lifting and shifting. We do not necessarily manage waste. We collect the waste from the cities, we go and dump it outside in a landfill, and that landfill then becomes a Mount Everest of waste. A large amount of that is recyclable waste. And since we are not doing it, is there a commercial way of doing it at scale? Now, the important question is, can this be done at scale? Because at a small scale, a lot of people are doing it. Can you scale? And when I say scale, the terminology that we used was, can we actually find any entrepreneur who can operate at 100 tons per day? Not 1 ton, not 300 kgs, not 500 kgs, 100 tons per day. We found a set of guys who were doing something like 50 kg, 200 kgs per day. And then we gave them some money. We asked them to actually integrate waste management rack pickers, who are the poorest of the poor, into their supply chain and scale. We failed miserably. We took the entrepreneurs aside. We told the entrepreneurs that just scaling up whatever you are doing is not going to work. Is there a better way and a different way of processing so that you can reach 100 tons of scale? And the entrepreneur came back saying, if you can give us a couple of $1 million, and just to give you the story, we gave them $500,000 earlier, and they tried to buy a lot of waste, and then there was a fire and the whole waste got burnt out. So all my $500 million became half a kg of ash in a very short period of time. Having understood the challenge that processing waste is a very complex area, they introduced the idea of using technology at a very high-end scale. And using further money that we put in, they have crossed 100 tons per day, and we are hoping they will cross 500 tons in next couple of years. Now, this is actually serious scale, because at 500 tons per day, you are effectively delivering a revenue of around $70 to $100 million. You are delivering an EBITDA margin of 20%. You are employing 30,000 rack pickers. That's the lowest end of the society. And you are saving the country and the nation and the world from the waste that is actually going and destroying your soil, your ecosystem, etc. Now, that's really return on impact that we are talking about. So you can go through a thesis, or you can identify other entrepreneurs who have a thesis of their own, early stage of thinking, and we allow our capital to take huge risk, and what I call it, huge extraordinary risk for unpredictable returns. If we are successful, our returns could be as high as 100%, 200%. And if we are not successful, our returns could be zero. This unpredictability is what makes us being called as an impact investor. And the ability to take extraordinary risk, which is like going and actually taking an audacious goal and putting our capital behind that, is what makes us an impact investor. And that's essentially what we are trying to do.
I think you have demonstrated the importance of really maximizing impact. I mean, three things really stood out. Number one, how do you actually increase your impact? Number two, the power of scaling. I really like that. And number three, being able to take and manage risk. I'm sure whatever that you've shared is not just relevant in the venture capital world, but these three principles will also be very relevant for people who are also working in companies. Because the key thing is, how do they then show these three things and help their companies benefit from a much wider impact? And do you think that there is one quality that a leader should have that would really make a difference in that person's success, especially in the corporate setting?
I have never worked in corporate settings, so let me actually start with that caveat. I generally believe that if you have to survive and scale and build things up, one of the things that you can do is never be satisfied with the most audacious goals, because what you would realize is there is somebody else coming up with a more audacious goal some point of time. Some young kid sitting in some extraordinary corner. If you just have a look at the top 20 companies by market capitalization right now, you would realize that almost 17 of them would actually did not exist probably a decade and a half back. That tells you that the longevity of you being at the top in the corporate space is getting shorter and shorter. And you as a leader have to look at a new goal and a new way of coming and taking things forward. Chances are you may not have that idea, and you might have to look out and meet more people. One of the things that I have actually noticed in the corporate spaces, people are actually very focused towards what their tasks are and not necessarily looking at the world. I work very closely with Paul Polman, the Unilever CEO, and one thing that stands out in my interactions with him is he's actually less concerned about Unilever's balance sheet, but more the role that Unilever is playing in influencing the world to be a more sustainable place. Something that probably reinforces and helps Unilever actually do better and better as time moves by. I think that's actually something, probably if I have to learn something or convey something to people in the corporate ladder, I would say that you need to actually look beyond your task, look probably beyond your company, look at the world as a whole and see if you are able to leverage your strategic position to make world a better place using your company as a leverage. And that alignment might make you a standout leader.
And it is true that when we look at companies that have gone the distance, companies that have been around for hundreds of years, now the key difference is that they have played a pivotal role in society. Strongest business fulfill a societal benefit. And if I were to ask you, how do you then, because what is it that you do on a daily basis, or do you have a particular habit or action you take that allows you to re-energize yourself?
I think there are two things that I actually keep telling everybody. One, I don't take myself very seriously. One of the things that I have realized is that most of us actually look at ourselves so seriously that we forget that we are the most dispensable commodity in this world. You are here, everybody will be running around you, really living to actually take care of your needs, your thoughts, your etc. You will start believing that without me, the company won't run, the department won't run, the place won't run. But next moment you fall sick, you are gone, somebody else will replace you before you actually can blink an eye. And that's the reality of our existence. The only truth that this world has, that all of us are going to die, but none of us want to believe that we are going to die. And that's essentially, I believe, is actually the biggest dichotomy that we deal with ourselves every day. I actually believe I'm the most dispensable guy. I actually also know that we are actually playing a game. Life is nothing more than a game. There is a big saying in Gita that focus on what you can do and leave the outcome or the fruit to the efforts that you have put in. You can't control the fruit, so focus on actually putting the seed in the ground and keep watering it till it becomes a plant and gives out. So seeing everything as a game, playing it to the extent you can, and then enjoying the fruit. It may actually not be very sweet, but enjoy it because it's your fruit itself. And that's what I do.
That's why life seems to be so sweet and meaningful for you. I personally like the guitar. The book has really had so much wisdom inside. And it also reminds us that, very often we focus too much on the results, but instead focus on the actions that we can take, because we are responsible for the action, but not the results. And I think that helps us to just get up no matter what happens and start all over, try something different, and not be afraid of failure. Now, so I'm going to ask you the failure question, because for somebody who treats life as a game, for somebody who has an audacious goal, you will have taken risks that may have backfired, that have allowed you to really have massive failures. So can you share with me what do you consider one of your biggest failures, and how did you overcome that?
I think the first time I actually came across failure was when I couldn't join Indian Army. It was probably the biggest letdown of my life. I actually asked myself this question, why did I not get through? And the only answer I could get is probably because I didn't deserve it. And so accepting your limitation was what my first failure taught me. That if you can't do it, it's not because you are not good at what you know. You are probably not good for what they are seeking from you. And that's how I actually deal with all my failures. We have made investments which have bombed, failed. I take great pride in actually making selections of entrepreneurs. Sometimes they let you down. But that doesn't mean that I actually don't know how to select good entrepreneurs. It's just that circumstances change. And when circumstances change, things go wrong. And if things go wrong, we are taking financial bets, and those bets will go away. But getting panicky about it, putting undue pressure on the entrepreneurs, or actually getting upset about it is not necessarily it's going to make things better. So at that point of time, take a deep breath. Ask yourself, did anybody force you to be in the business that you are in? Nobody forced me to actually be an impact investor. And if things go wrong, and if I'm not as successful as some other people are, you have to just clap for them. You have to feel proud of what they have achieved, and also take great pride in where you are with your limitations, with your abilities, and accepting your limitations probably makes you feel better about the failures that you come across. Because for every failure that you have, you might have two successes. Just that you are so focused on the failure, you might not acknowledge your success. So I actually, every time I fail, I look for the successes. As my wife calls it, I have this great ability to look for the silver lining in the darkest of clouds. And I'm always happy because I see that small silver lining. And to me, the dark clouds don't matter till the time I can figure out that silver lining.
It's whatever that we are focused on, we will find, and that's the interesting thing. So that's why I can see that you're somebody who looks at the positives, no matter how dark it is. That is a milestone, a very visible trait of any entrepreneur, any person who has an audacious goal, because that's what keeps you going. So you have talked about the $1 billion goal. Is there another compelling, audacious goal that you've set your sights on?
Well, actually, the $1 billion, we are already there. I think it's just a matter of 6 months, 8 months. What we are trying to do, though, is actually convert the whole group, which started with an idea of taking capital and taking talent to India's hinterland. We are trying to expand across Asia and Africa. And to make that happen over the next 8 years, we are trying to reach $10 billion of assets under management. So it's a 10x goal over the next 8 years. Also become a premier mass market or low income market, diversified financial institution that actually focuses only on low income people. So these are the two big ambitions. I think the second ambition is far more challenging than the first, because meeting numbers is actually easy. Meeting those numbers with the constraint of not expanding beyond the low income community is actually an audacious one. Partly because if I succeed in my goal, that is make every poor person rich, my $10 billion business may not exist at all, because then my client system would have gone away. But anybody who is actually working in the space of impact, you have to actually believe that at some point of time, your customer will vanish and must vanish, because that's the goal we have given ourselves. So yes, in terms of targets, I want to be managing $10 billion in assets. And my other target is actually to do this while serving the low income population. And hopefully, at some point of time in my life, in my history, we won't have that customer left. They all became rich. And in that case, our business may not have any reason to exist. But that's, to me, is therefore ambitious and an audacious goal. Hopefully, Sustainable Development Goals talk about no poverty, no hunger by 2030. Maybe I'll be able to reach my goal and shut down my company by 2030 as well.
We hope that you're able to achieve that as well. Can you just share one thing that perhaps is a note of optimism? I mean, why you believe that your goal is possible in terms of bridging the gap?
I think India is probably one of the largest percentage of the global challenge if it comes to the income difference. We have probably one of the most stark income difference anywhere in the world. The reason I am very positive is we as a country have been able to take the maximum number of people out of poverty in a very short period of time over the last decade. It's just an extraordinary achievement that has been done by the entrepreneurial ecosystem, as well as using technology and finance to bringing this all together. So in India, what has happened is that in last decade, we have taken and reduced our poverty. Probably we are roughly now 20% of India is actually living below poverty lines. And we are hopeful that over next 10 years, not only will we pull this section of the population above the poverty line, but we will be able to build a social infrastructure that can hold them where they are, that means above the poverty line, and hopefully push them out of it. That itself gives me the biggest hope that if we can do this in India, which actually houses the largest number of poor in the world, most likely we should be able to pull other countries and hopefully offer a sort of a paradigm that developed countries like United States, which is facing a fairly significant gap between those who are homeless, those who do not have places to go, and Europe, which is actually also seeing a significant influx and a slowing economy, can adopt over a period of time.
What you just mentioned is that no problem is too difficult to solve. Literally, it starts with an audacious goal and ensuring that, you know, when people put their strengths together, we are able to scale up. So, I mean, thanks for just helping us to see the big vision you have. And I think it applies to a lot of areas as well. So Vineet, if you had to share one last thing to our summit audience, the Rise to the Ranks audience, what would your one last message be?
I think one last message be that one of the things that we can all do is make the world a better place to live in. There are many different ways you can contribute. It is not necessary for you to change what you are doing, but if you actually can start looking out for people, be a cheerleader for them who are trying to work with those who are in difficult situations, you may make a huge difference with just an acknowledgement, just saying thank you, just being grateful to those people. You can make a huge difference and also give enough impetus for those guys to continue working on the hard path for their own lifetime. Each one of you can contribute. Please do so if you can.
Thank you, Vineet. I think your message about how we can maximize impact starts from within. Just changing the way that we see the world, believing that things are possible because things are. And that is a great mantra for our lives. So thank you, Vineet, once again for coming on board, sharing with us your audacious story. I've learned an incredible perspective just from listening to you. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
And to our summit audience, stay awesome, and here's to maximizing your impact.